Hey guys, thanks so much for stopping by. My name's Austin, and today we are taking a look at the Transformers Age of the Primes, Superion, the Aerialbots. This is a combination of 5 different individual releases that make up one combiner. So I decided to do it this way because it didn't really feel like each individual release was worth a full video, and I thought it would be more interesting to just go ahead and take a look at all of them. I have a fear that this is probably going to be a super bloated video compared to what I have done in the past, but hopefully this will work, and if it does, then I'll probably use this format for any kind of combiner release because I do really like the combiners and they're one of my favorite things to collect in Transformers. So I will go ahead and get right into it. I didn't hold on to all of the boxes, but in taking a look at the general idea of the box art for Age of the Primes, it's pretty good. Let me move Silverbolt out of the way so we can look at it. This is Fireflight's box, so you kind of get an idea of the artwork that they're going for. Definitely makes the figure, look pretty good. Then you see some art on the back. Not sure if this is a digital render. I think it's a digital render. I don't think it's an actual image of the product, but same diff. And you see Superion on the other side. It's kind of nice. They give you this breakdown of what you're getting. So this is the 4th out of 5. I think Skydive was the last, but this was the last one I got, so that's why I held on to it. Silverbolt did come in a different box, that kind of commander class style. The only real, very similar box art and everything. The only real difference is it's obviously much bigger, and instead of the window, you just get an artist's representation of Silverbolt. So all in all, I like the boxes for Transformers figures. They do a good job. They're very cohesive, and they feel like you kind of know what line you're getting. So that's all I've got for boxes. Let's go ahead and get started on the aesthetics for these guys. So in the interest of trying to keep the bloat down on this video, I'm pretty much going to group the Aerialbots into 3. All 4 of them are deluxe classes except for Silverbolt, and then the 4 deluxe are kind of 2 extremely similar molds. So going through the aesthetics, I am going to talk about all of them, but I'm going to kind of be quick about, well, hopefully quick. I have a tendency to ramble about the 2 matching figures, if that makes sense. Hopefully it makes sense once we get into it. Starting with Air Raid, he is an F-15 Eagle in his alt mode, and he kind of has the misfortune, I would say, of sharing his design with Starscream. So it sort of gives you expectations on what he should look like, but that's more of a issue for his alt mode that we'll discuss later. In terms of the aesthetics for his base mode, or his bot mode, I do really like pretty much everything they're doing here. I like the design of the guns. The colorway is really good. Obviously, red, white, and black, there's a reason that those colors work well together and are done so often. I will say, I think I have him technically mistransformed because I like to kind of pop the nose cone back a little bit, cockpit nose cone back a little bit. It gives him a little bit more of a unique look when he's put next to Skydive because they're on that same mold. I like the fact that, it's a Transformer. You can kind of do what you want with it. They give you the ability to adjust the different pieces to kind of have what you like. Obviously you can control the wingspan. If you want it put all the way back like that, you can. I think they look better a little bit popped out like that. I think that's how they're supposed to be in robot mode. But yeah, aesthetically, this guy's really solid, and there's not much of an issue to talk about other than maybe the fact that, he doesn't have a ton of paint work on him. And obviously his backpack is rather large, but they did a good job of balancing out that backpack. They did this with all the Aerialbots, giving them very pronounced feet so they can pretty easily combat that giant backpack by, standing strong. Then moving on to, I guess I'll just go in the order of what I remember them to be released in, or at least what I picked up. Then we have Slingshot. I would say out of all of them, Slingshot's probably my least favorite. The head sculpt is good and it's accurate, but I hate it. It just kind of loses a lot of the detail that I think it could have because it's all one color, which again, it's a G1 design. It's accurate, but I just, not really my favorite. He's also, he's a VTOL jet. I can't remember I think it's a Harrier jump jet. I don't think he really looks like that in alt mode, and then in bot mode, you really get just the most pronounced legs. It's not terrible, but it's just, his side profile is kind of funny looking. The Aerialbots, I think overall, do kind of suffer from having pronounced stuff on them. They are deluxe classes. They're working with the deluxe class budget, and the priority is to make them limbs for Superion. So while they don't suffer as much as they could in their robot modes, I do think that obviously, there are a few downsides to them being just straight up deluxe classes and the priority being on the combiner. But even so, they are unique in their own way, and I do really like each of them for their own reasons. It's just that Slingshot for me is my least favorite. One thing to note, he has the same type of weapons as Fireflight, but I like the fact that they have 5mm pegs on the sides, so you can either display them in hand or on the side. I like his on the side and then Fireflight's on in hand. Kind of another way to make them distinctive despite them sharing a mold. So pretty cool. Then we have Fireflight was we'll just go ahead and get the deluxe classes out of the way. You can immediately see the similarities. The wings are on the feet, very pronounced feet, and then pronounced backpack. Let me actually peg that in so that it's a little bit less pronounced. It's still pretty pronounced. I can't remember what jet he is. I will put it on the screen because I can't for the life of me remember it. I just freshened up on their names, but this one I kept forgetting. He's not a VTOL though. I do know that. He does have a different nose cone. I'm talking too much about the alt modes when we're talking about the robot modes. I think I like Fireflight's a lot, his overall design a lot. I think he kind of improves on everything that I didn't really love about Slingshot, just because the color is more interesting to me, and I really like this face sculpt. But yeah, he's got the same blasters, same overall design, with slightly different sculpt work to kind of set them apart. The chest is subtly different. He has a little bit extra surface detail, a little bit extra paint work. But yeah, I really like Fireflight for what he is. I think this mold is probably my least favorite of the Aerialbots. It's just the feet really don't work for me. But then my favorite out of all the Aerialbots, even including Silverbolt, I really, really like Skydive. He is a fighting falcon, an F-16, and I love the way that they did it. I love the colorway. I like his blasters a lot. His head sculpt is great. You get the blue of his eyes to kind of make him look different. And then I really like this type of jet. My favorite jet is a Tomcat, but the Fighting Falcon is really interesting, and I feel like it's a jet we don't get as often because the Seekers are always Eagles. But yeah, I really do like the way that they incorporated his bulk. He's pretty slim, and then the wings actually kind of connect in like this and still kick out a little bit, and I like that a lot. They're not totally flat the way that air raids are. So really, really like this guy. He's definitely my favorite of the deluxes. And you can kind of see, it's interesting how they did the change on the chest. It's almost identical in every way, but they added a little block there for the vents on the chest, and that's where his Autobot symbol is. So I think overall they did a good job of keeping the characters unique while still following the same overall design. And it's probably not everyone's preference, but I understand it from the perspective of you're releasing 6 figures that are all supposed to combine together. It makes sense that they're going to look similar. Then you come to the commander class of the wave, or of the combiner, Silverbolt. I really like Silverbolt. I think he's a Concorde SST, if I'm right. He's a little bit goofier just because he has to be the chest, so he kind of needs to be bulky to make up everything. Overall, he looks really good. I think the only real downside is how big the backpack is. They did a good job of giving him these really big, pronounced feet so that this isn't a problem, but it does stick out pretty notably. His overall look is good. There's not much paint work, I will say. It's kind of a bummer. His head sculpt is really solid. I like that. There's some good and some bad with this guy. I think overall he just doesn't really wow me, and being the biggest and most expensive figure, it's kind of a bummer that he's not more impressive to me. But is what it is. It still looks good. It still does the job, and yeah, that's about all I've got for aesthetics. I mean, we can talk about the giant brick that comes with Silverbolt. This is basically all of the limbs that make up the frame of the combiner. This is fine. There's a base mode for it. I don't care. It is literally just this, but you move the waist up higher on it and then put the gun right here, and it's like just a big wall for him to shoot from. It's fine. I don't care. I feel nothing about most base modes, and this is definitely not an exception to that, but it's good. Now let's go ahead and get into the accessories. So there's not really a lot to talk about when it comes to accessories. All of the Aerialbots come with 2 identical guns, just molded in black plastic, no paintwork on any of them, including Silverbolt. He just comes with guns. But I thought it was good to talk about them. For one thing, the mold work on Air Raid's gun is good, kind of gives you a little shotgun vibe. Then you have Fireflight and Slingshot have identical kind of null ray-esque blasters. They look good. I like them. And then you get Skydive's blasters, which are very like traditional ray gun kind of looks. I like them. The sculpted detail on all of them is pretty good. It's too bad that they're all molded just in straight black plastic, but not a huge deal. Then you get Silverbolt's blaster, which kind of looks like a little rocket on its own, which is fine, but it looks stumpy and weak. And the reason that it's so stumpy is because you also get Superion's blaster, which kind of has 2 different modes. It can be flat like that or kicked up like a I don't know, like a fin. I guess actually maybe I like it more like that. But then you attach Silverbolts to the end and you get the full size gun. So again, a concession was made to allow for the combiner. The guns are all kind of uninteresting, and you would think that you would put them all on here to make this gun more interesting, but you don't do that. The guns just kind of store in random places, and you don't really even have dedicated weapon storage for them in the combined mode. So the big problem with them is that in the individual figures, they look good, they work, but I would have really liked it if the combined mode had a gun that allowed you to attach stuff to it. There are some pegs that you can kind of get stuff into and kind of make stuff work, and I'll talk about that when we're talking about Superion. But it would have been really cool to have dedicated ports for each thing, kind of make a big built-up gun. I don't think that that's really a standard with combiners, but there's a third-party Bruticus that I have that's I think he's like a Legend scale figure. I think his brand is Pocket Toys, but he's a KO of an existing brand. And, it's always confusing with those companies. But that does a really interesting thing where all of the pieces of the gun of the individual guns come together to make Bruticus's full blaster. And I just really would have liked to see that with this. It's kind of the same thing with Devastator, which we'll talk about in a different video, obviously. But it's something that I think Hasbro could look into doing that would be really nice for future combiners. But other than that, that's pretty much all we've got for accessories, simple stuff. So now we'll go ahead and get onto the articulation. For articulation, I'm just going to go over one of each mold, so that way we're not spending too much time talking about it because they are identical. So Air Raid, the kind of fighter jet mold, has this kind of articulation. You have simple ball peg that allows for, a good degree of range. Ball pegs are never really a crazy accomplishment on Transformers figures, but this does have a little hinge that if you need him to look up, he can. It's a transformation joint, so it's not like it's really designed for that, but it's an option if you want it. When you come down to the arms, you have very simple, just hinge joint. He can go all the way a little bit over 90, pretty good. Then he does have bicep swivel and a 90-degree elbow, slightly above 90. I think it's kind of negligible. And then simple wrist that's just, it kind of goes inward to transform. You're probably not going to really use that for much other than transforming, but, you can kind of get it at an angle if you had a different melee weapon you wanted to put in his hands. You could do that. Then you get down to the waist. There's nothing in the chest, but the waist has a full 360 swivel, so that's good. Gives you a lot of options there. Then the legs can do full splits. They're just on hinges, so you can pretty much go up until the crotch piece blocks them completely. So that's good. Then you can go same kind of same kind of deal. You can kick up that far as the waist will let it, and back. Surprise, surprise. It does kind of hit the wing and backpack assembly, so that blocks you from doing it completely, but it's still, very expressive. So good legs. The very chunky knees go 90, so pretty solid, and they can kind of kick forward a little bit, which I find myself using a lot in, stock kind of standing poses, because you can kind of give them a little bit of attitude that you otherwise can't really get out of a simplistic articulation scheme. You just have a little bit more balance and a little bit more control over how he looks if you can do that little bit of the leg. Then you come down to the ankle. The ankle can go forward on a transformation joint. It has ankle pivot. This one, really, really good ankle pivot, so you can, as far over as you want, you're going to be able to get it. And then if you want it, you can kind of pop out this transformation joint and very slightly move it back before it looks completely insane. I mean, it's I don't know. It's up to you if you want to really use that. I wouldn't consider that like an actual articulation point, but I think there are certain poses you could kind of hit with that. All in all, for a deluxe class, this pose is fine. The articulation is okay on Air Raid and Skydive, but it's it's good enough for one part of a combiner. I think they probably could have cheaped out a little bit more, and it's nice that we have what we have because it works pretty well. Then onto the other. I mean, I guess they're all fighter jets, huh? I don't know. This is the VTOL, the other jet. It articulates differently. I wouldn't necessarily say better, but the head is much more expressive. You can get a little bit of tilt, but up and down, the down is a lot better. And the up is, actually, now that I look at it, it's kind of non-existent. But yeah, so that's, not the best. Then down to the arms, you can kind of work with it because he's on this transformation hinge. And so you can get a little bit above 90. It looks a little goofy, but it's good. It gives you a little range. You got the full rotation. He doesn't have any wings behind him to block that, so that's good. Then you have bicep swivel, and you have a double jointed elbow, and he can fully crunch in because that's how he transforms. So that's kind of cool. I like the attitude you can get out of his arms. They look kind of funky because of the transformation, and then you get no wrist articulation, but it's nice to have double jointed elbows. That's kind of uncommon. Then you get the same kind of waist articulation. I'm not really going to criticize these guys for not having an ab crunch because they are deluxe class, and it's also part of the combination that they need their waist to be kind of break apartable. So no biggie. But then you get down to the waist. Very similar story. You're getting full splits, full Van Damme, kicks forward, kicks back. It's all, it's all kind of the same engineering amongst them. Then bigger leg can't quite get 90 on its own, but it's fine because you can kind of just get it further with the waist, so that's fine. Then it can kick forward a little bit the same way. So all four Aerialbots kind of have that bit of forward to their knees, which is cool. Then down to the ginormous feet, you get great ankle pivot, plenty of range there, so that's cool. You can kind of kick down because of the transformation again. These don't go up any, so you're just going down on the toe, but there's some poses that you can kind of get something out of there, so I'm glad that they included that. You also have thigh swivel, I guess I should include on a mushroom peg. So this is an additional point of articulation that all of them do have, so that's nice. That gives you options. Again, it's nice to have little things you can kind of do to tweak poses, especially when they look so similar, to kind of give them their own vibes. Then getting on to the commander class, Silverbolt. We're not going to worry about the articulation for his base because there is no articulation, unless you count the little wing bits that can come out. But anyways, his head is on that very same ball peg. Not a ton, but a little bit better than the deluxe class guys got. Coming down, obviously nothing in the chest. You do have very, very tight. It's kind of funny. I don't know. I'll talk about this in a little bit. Let's talk about the arms. Your arms are on standard hinges, so they go up that far. He has rotation, typical standard stuff. He goes a little bit over 90, which is nice. And you can also absolutely break his elbow if you wanted to, just for the transformation. Then he has this hinge style for his fists, so that they can kind of transform away. That's fine. That's kind of cool if you have like a melee weapon. It works to kind of get them in like a sword holding pose. Of course, he doesn't come with one, but if you had something that, was floating around that you wanted to give to Silverbolt, you could. Getting to the waist, it's kind of funny because he technically has waist articulation, but it's like super hard to engage because, for one thing, it's just a tight joint, which is preferable. You want the joint to be tight, but it's, he has a huge backpack, so that kind of gets in the way and makes it difficult for you to really make full use of it. But it's nice to have it. I'm not going to complain about its existence. Talking about the waist, you get full splits as expected. This skirting will get out of the way so that you can go all the way up to here. It's on a very heavy ratchet and works well. It's kind of interesting to me that this is on a ratchet because it doesn't really come into play on the combined mode, except for maybe it just kind of adds some structural integrity, but it's really locked into place in combined mode, so I'm a little bit surprised about that, but no complaints. I like ratchet joints. Then going down, you can go back this far. I didn't really talk about it, but obviously you're limited by the backpack. That's kind of the name of the game with Silverbolt. His backpack is going to get in the way. Then you have that same thigh rotation, so good to see that. The knees will go super far. Again, it's because of transformation, but you can kind of make him do. Oh man, you can make him do some good stuff. It's nice to have that. Obviously, again, I keep harping on it. I don't mean to be super. It's Transformers have backpacks, but it does kind of get in the way of that and keeps you from really being able to use it to the full. But you've got it, and it's available for you. Then coming down to the feet, you have ankle pivot that lock into place. So this is obviously for the combined mode. It kind of has to be structurally sound, but just remember when you get him out, he does have that ankle pivot. You just kind of have to unleash it. Disconnect it, basically. All in all, articulation on these guys, it's not blowing me away. It's not like reinventing the wheel, but they work well. They get the job done. Each of these molds have solid articulation, and for deluxe classes, I think they're good. And then, with him being a commander class, obviously that's because you have all of the stuff to make him into Superion, so I'm not expecting to be blown out of the water or blown away by his articulation. So they're all good. Now I'm going to go ahead and get into, I guess, let's go ahead and do, I'm going to save comparisons for last because I feel like Superion is the more important comparison. So we're going to go ahead and talk about their alt modes, do all the transformations and everything, and then talk about Superion after that. So let's get into it. Transformation for these guys is very, very simple. I'm going to kind of stick with this way of just showing the mold. If you want to watch, I have shorts videos for all of the transformations. I don't think all of them will be posted by the time this video goes up, but if you just kind of keep an eye on my channel, they'll be going up progressively. I'm kind of working my way through the collection. So transforming the Eagle and Fighting Falcon molds, it's pretty straightforward. You're just gonna make sure you've got the elbows locked, fold in these, and then go to the backpack. This isn't really a step you'll have to do if you did it the way that the instructions tell you, but it's just what I like to do. Make sure that's that. Fold or rotate this, then pop it. There's some pegs back here that you want to disconnect it from. I'm probably gonna cut that. Then swing this up. There we go. Then you can bring the arms in, peg them into his sides. There we go. Then bring the wings down, and there's these little slots that they go into. It doesn't really majorly affect the structural integrity or anything, but it's good to have some slots, you know. Then you attach these to each other, bring up the legs, make sure your ankle pivot is not engaged. They kind of flatten out like this and then come up like this. So that makes up the very bulky bottom. Then on this kind of weird rocker joint, pop this out of place, then bring it up, and there's these two. It's not showing up super good. I probably should have done Skydive instead of Air Raid now that I think about it, but they kind of peg in and slot in to that part. There we go. Then fold these down, swivel these around, and then down here, get your nail underneath this, and if it'll do it, there we go. Break your nail while you're doing that. Then you get his landing gear out, and that is the Eagle and Fighting Falcon jets transformed. The only difference is this has the two tail fins sticking up, and Skydive only has the one, so pretty good. Then going on to Slingshot and Fireflight, rotate the heads around, pop out landing gear, unpeg this, bring it down. You don't bring that up yet, sorry. Then you'll fully 180 degree rotate both arms and do that. Kind of hinge them upwards. They will peg in to two peg holes behind. Then you can bring this up. This will peg into place here. This one doesn't stick as well for me as the other jet, so right now it's doing good, and maybe it's just me transforming it funny, but oh well, you know what? I think yeah. Anyways, so that's something to look out for. Then you come down, peg these in, pop this down. There's another kind of like rocker joint that can swivel. There we go, or hinge, not swivel. Saying the same stuff and not really describing anything, so not sure how helpful it is. Pop these in, bring the wings out, kind of clasp these together, and then bring up the fin. And there you go. That's the jet done. Pretty fun transformation for that. For Silverbolt's transformation, it's also pretty straightforward, but you know, there's a little bit more to remember. You're going to start by kind of swapping the heads, basically tucking away the Silverbolt head, bringing out the Superion head. Then you'll hide the fists, break his elbows, and then fold in the shoulders. And, well, let me fix the elbow real quick. Fold in the shoulders until they both click, like that. Then you can bring the head chest assembly up. The Superion head will be out. You can rotate that around if you want. You can kind of do that whenever you want to. Then coming down to the legs, rotate these outwards. And then there's some clicky parts of the knee. You'll kind of feel them when you try and do it. You'll want to put those at 90, close up the little rear part of the foot. Then there's a pocket that the forearms, there we go, the forearms go into. So you can bring that in. Then you'll kick the feet down. Whoop, kick the feet down. Then do the same. Second verse, just like the first. Bring it all up. Like that. There we go. Foot comes down. All that. Then we can go around to the back. You can, if you want to, you can kind of collapse the wings now, flatten them out if you want. Then you'll detach this part of the backpack, kind of click it all upwards and into place. Something you have to keep an eye on with this transformation is that the antennas correctly go into these little notches. If not, the head won't sit flat and you can actually kind of pop the antennas off if you're not too careful. Let me see if I can make sure I've actually got that. I think that's about good. Then you will go over here, pop out the nose cone, click it back down. Then we can go to the back and slot it down like that. And that is Silverbolt all done. Now what you can also do, if you, sorry, let me do it on camera, bring these up, flatten the tail fin like that, bring out the wingtips like that. And then you get your big brick. This one you want to just, this one you want to just pop these forward like that. If these aren't out, make sure they're out. Then you can bring Silverbolt back in and clasp that together. That'll attach. And you just fold the wings down like that. And then you have the incredibly funny giant shuttle, basically. More of a space shuttle at this point, but it works fine. It's definitely not my preferred look. I kind of like it better as just the plane with the collapsed wing and the vertical tail fin. So, you know, it looks good like that. Honestly, all of these look good, and I would say they all accomplish what they want to accomplish. When it comes to the aesthetics, you run into the same issue that all Transformers do when they transform into a jet. You have a big, bulky undercarriage. They didn't really do anything to hide that on this, the Air Raid and Skydive molds. I would say it looks a little bit less noticeable on this, but it's kind of just because the jet as a whole is chunkier, and it's less noticeable on the VTOL, but on the Fireflight mold, his jet is really supposed to be more streamlined than it is in this. In fact, I'm going to cut real quick. I'm going to transform the other two, and then we'll talk about all the molds individually. So 1 second. So in terms of aesthetics with the alt modes for all of these, I think, again, Skydive as the Fighting Falcon is probably my favorite alt mode. I like the overall... Oh, forgot the fin. I like the overall look of the F4 Phantom 2, but when you actually look it up, this is far away from what it's supposed to look like. It's very chunky. You know, it hides the robot parts pretty decently, I guess, but the wings should be way further forward, much closer to the cockpit, more in line with how Air Raid and Skydive have their wings, probably honestly even further forward than them. On the Phantom, the wings are almost touching the cockpit. So, you know, it would have been nice if they had some kind of maybe rocker that allowed you to swing these forward. Honestly, though, it probably needed a whole different mold. When you look at the Harrier jet, the VTOL, the jump jet, whatever you call it, in real life, it is a much different jet design than the Phantom. And while they did try to, you know, redo certain aspects of it, and I do like the look of it in a vacuum, it's not accurate to the jet that it's supposed to be. But at the same time, none of these are. They're all kind of chibi-fied and, you know, toyetic in their own way. And I appreciate them for what they are. That being said, also, it's good to note you have kind of dedicated weapon storage, and this is something that I've always really liked about any kind of jet transformer, is you have that weapon storage under the wings pretty much all the time that fits in with the ship, or the jet, and looks right in line with how it should. You know, sometimes part storage or weapon storage can kind of look goofy, but on these, they look pretty good, and they don't really stick out once you've got them on there. This obviously does a little bit more because this is like a commercial ship, or this is a commercial, you know, passenger jet, so it sticks out a little bit more, but it doesn't look bad. I still, you know, don't mind it. Also, you can bring out the pretty good integrated landing wheels on here. Pretty effective. I apologize to anybody who knows a bunch about jets because I am probably misusing tons of terms. I have a very tertiary knowledge that comes mostly from Ace Combat, so it's pretty limited. But, the other thing that I do dislike, the feet on this guy stick out super pronounced, and they just, you know, it's even more so than just looking underneath it and seeing how obviously that's just Superion's chest. This is kind of a bummer, but Not the end of the world. I would say overall they may could have done better in certain areas, but for what it is, for the fact that it's 4 deluxes, I kind of get where they're coming from. But now that's enough about the alt modes. Let's go ahead and start transforming him into Superion. Let me cut real quick, kind of get my spot set up a little bit better for that. And be 1 second. All right. So now that we have adjusted things around a little bit, I'm going to start with the frame to kind of give you guys an idea of how that goes together, and then we'll take it from there. So detach the crotch part of Superion. It comes off pretty easy. Then you just break this in half. There's just some pegs. In doing that, I kind of collapsed these, but you'll collapse them at some point. Then you break this even further in half, making sure to keep that separate. And then we'll do the other side. There we go. That makes, actually we'll start bottom up, right? That gives you 2 separate arms and legs. These are the back of the foot. Pop that in place. And then you'll take this, rotate it up. And then there's these little locks that you just pop over. That just keeps this locked and tight. I find that that's not as important once you get the actual jets in there, but it's good to do it nonetheless. Then you just swing this down, collapse this in, and that is your first foot right there. We'll just go ahead and do that. I might cut this depending on how quickly I can do it. I don't want to waste too much of y'all's time. There we go. That wasn't too bad. All right, then to do the crotch, it's pretty simple. All you got to do is just swing this up. Swing. Actually, that can kind of stay. Basically, just getting it ready for Silverbolt to be attached. Then collapse these downwards. Make sure they're rotated equally. I actually had that mistransformed. That's kind of a nice thing with this whole deal. You can kind of mistransform a lot of it without it being a huge issue, unless you're, a stickler for how you want stuff to look and make sure that everything's like perfectly accurate, whatever. But once you get those together, then you can just set them aside. I'm not going to worry about that right now. Then we get to the arms. All we're going to do right now is just swing those out, swing this up, and then same for the other one. Just swing that fist down, swing that out. This does expand outwards, but we're only going to do that once we put the jets on, because it's kind of part of the whole process. Then you want to bring in Silverbolt. A lot of the Aerialbots you kind of just partially transform, and this is no different. So you'll just bring his wings like that. Then you'll kind of prep his fin. We don't want to collapse that, just did it on accident. Then you collapse this, doing exactly the same, swinging it down, kind of keeping these up. You don't want to fully tab everything in just yet, because it'll tab in once you've attached him to the frame. And then swivel the head. Now you got him all ready to go. All you're going to do is, missed one part. Make sure his landing gear is collapsed on the waist. Then you will just kind of finagle that. So all you're doing is getting this little tab in there, and then you're going to make sure that you get his actual crotch piece attached to the bigger crotch. I'm sure there's plenty of very original jokes that could be made there. Then you're going to get that in there. It's kind of hard to see, but you'll basically just flatten it out, and then this part will swing into it. Then you can attach the upper part, which is kind of a pain in the butt, honestly, and it doesn't really make a huge difference aside from some structural integrity. Then with that all done, just swing these in, and they tab right there, and then you're good. And that is that portion done. Then these slot in like, make sure that your wings aren't attached. They slot in like so. And the kind of funny part is you've effectively got Superion all in one, and this is just from Silverbolt. If you extend the arms out, it looks fine. He just looks a little bit shrimpy, maybe. But then we're going to bring the Aerialbots in. These guys, you do hardly anything. I collapse this and leave these out for the time being. I don't really know if there's anything else. I didn't pay super close attention to the instructions, but it's pretty simple. All you do is attach this. Oh, make sure that landing gear gets me every time. Make sure that this is nice and tight. Now I'm going to cut because it is extremely difficult to do it in this position, and I kind of have to do it behind the camera. So if it happens quickly, then we won't worry with it. All right, and we're back from the editing break. Basically, these detach outwards, and this kind of dissects itself. I don't love how aggressive it is. You can also just kind of push a thin piece. If you have like a part separator, you can kind of just pop it in to this little slot right here on both of them, and that'll basically just open it up for you to split it, and then you can do it manually. I honestly think that's how I'm going to do it going forward, just to prevent any unnecessary damage. But now you've got the extended out arm. Now, I think the big thing that I differentiate on, I collapse these in. I think the instructions say to do it out. But if they wanted me to do it out, they should have given some kind of detail to the interior instead of these ugly 5mm ports. So you do kind of take away the opportunity for more weapon stability and weapon storage, but I wouldn't want to store the weapons there anyways, and to me, that looks a lot cleaner. So then I'm probably going to just cut again and do the... Actually, let's just do it live on camera and show you guys what I'm talking about. If you don't want the really aggressive thing, just put your part separator right in there, and then voila, you've got a 2007 movie jazz version of Slingshot. Too soon? I don't think so. That movie's really old, which kind of bums me out because I was... Anyways, probably going to edit all of this out, or I'm going to leave it in because, I don't know, maybe it gives personality to the recording. So that's kind of seeing... Actually, I am going to leave this in so that you can see how that works. It just swings out like that, and then notches into place, and then you can take the butt of Slingshot, attach it like that, flatten the tail, flatten the wings, and you've got the upper half of Superion all done. Now I'm going to cut again. We're going to just shift everything downwards. So now we're looking at Superion's legs. I get these mixed up all the time. I think I have the arms right, but it's hard for me to remember which Aerialbot goes to which leg. Also, the legs are kind of my biggest complaint with the set, but we'll get into that. Anyways, collapse his landing gear, then you're basically just starting with a vehicle mode and partially transforming, but you'll rotate the head backwards, pop this into place. Where is it at? This is always kind of interesting because I feel like I always struggle with this part, and I don't really know why. I don't think it's anything I'm doing wrong. Yep, it was my fault. Make sure that you bring this back before you try and latch it in if you've got the head down. So I'm an idiot. But anyways, that is down now. Then you will bring it all in like so. Collapse these. Now, I personally like to swivel these upwards to get them out of the way. I don't know if it matters too much, but you're impeding the articulation so much on the legs with these bricks that, is what it is. So we are going to put air raid on his right leg. Now, what's interesting is you've got to kind of get him situated. He's got these pegs and these pegs, and they go in. And it's kind of a mech tech thing where by attaching... I'm sorry, I'm shaking the camera. If anybody gets motion sickness easily, they've probably already clicked off, but if you haven't, thank you for sticking with me. This is atrocious. You would just make sure that it's attached. You close those hangar bay doors and everything's stuck on there, and then you've got air raid hanging off the back. So that's really cool. It makes me really happy. I don't know why it looks like that, but I mean, I know why it looks like that. That's how Superion is supposed to look, but anyways, we'll talk about it in a little bit. Here is Skydive. Same thing, basically. Something to note about his transformation, though. you kind of want to bring his fin up because for some reason they put it on an octagonal spot. So it's like pronounced and it's kind of hard for it to swivel without you bringing it up out of the way. But anyways, then you close these. This is a terrible way to work. Bring the whole assembly down like that, and I'll prove it live and on camera that it was just me being stupid. It pegs in no problem. Then this swivels back. There we go. Drop the head back, close landing gear, bring the wings back. Again, I really like how these kind of stick out a little bit. In fact, it helps make him a little bit more visible in the Superion mode. So now we're going to just attach that in there. Just going to peg it all in there. Again, shaky camera, I'm so sorry. Now you've got a completed Superion. So I'm going to talk about Superion in parts mostly because my recording studio doesn't really allow for me to get the whole thing in here. This is a huge figure. We'll talk about it in comparisons, but I really like a lot of what they did with him. I think my only real complaint, I really don't mind the idea of a frame combiner. I think, especially with this guy, it makes sense just based off of how he's designed in the show. He kind of has a bunch of extra bulk to him, and so it's reasonable to do it this way. However, that being said, this is just really disappointing. Not only do they hinder the articulation to an extent because they push into his butt, but they also just stick off in a really goofy way. Like, the arms are really well integrated and they feel like a part of the sculpt, you know? The colors match really well. It looks good. I like it with the wings collapse like this. But these guys just stick off the back in this super awkward way. And depending on how you have them displayed, they aren't even visible. So you could get these three bots, my fingers aren't visible, and just skip out on Air Raid and Skydive, and then just, you know, add a little something that closes these bay doors, and it'll look basically the same unless you make a point to look at them. I don't personally advocate doing that because I really like Air Raid and Skydive. I think they are probably the standouts of the Aerialbots, but you know, you can do that if that's what you want to do, and it's kind of a bummer that this combiner has two completely unnecessary additions that really don't add much. But anyways, let's get into the articulation on this guy because it's actually very solid. Considering how bulky and big he is, he's actually really tight and firm, and everything stays where it should. He's got a lot of ratchet joints. So at the head, he's got same standard ball peg, nothing crazy going on. He's able to, you know, look around as he needs to, but it's nothing wild. Then going down to the arms, he can go out this far, but you can also use these very, very solid foot joints on Silverbolt to get really high up. Very good articulation there. Then he does have kind of elbow swivel, which works. You know, his whole bicep is kind of taken up by Fireflight, so that's good. Then he can, obviously, you know, he can go all the way around on heavy ratchets, which is really good. It holds well wherever you put it. Really like that. There's a slight ratchet in here, a little bit softer, but goes up to 90. Looks good. Does well. Then you do have, if I can engage it, you have a swivel at the wrist, and you can bring the wrist in, which is cool. Obviously, that's a transformation joint, but again, if you have a melee weapon, it's kind of a good little thing extra to have. Nothing in the chest. He does have a kind of butterfly joint of sorts. It can go back, if you can kind of see. It's just his ankle pivot engaging, and it actually just disconnected this one, so you might be careful with how you do that. But, you know, you can do it if you want to, I guess. It might add a little bit of extra dynamism. Then his waist, he does have good waist rotation. You're pretty much getting as much as you want out of it. You can unlock this, which does affect some of the structural stability, but it's there if you want it. The wings can pretty much freely move, so you can keep them back a little bit if you like that, which I personally do, but you can also flatten them if you want to, or you can really bring them all the way back. I'm not sure which is correct. I don't think it really matters. I think it's up to you what you want to do. Then we're going to shift down. I apologize for anyone who is throwing up right now because of the horrible shakiness of this camera. My tripod is not the best. He can do the full Van Damme splits. He would make him proud. Jean-Claude would be proud. You can get the skirting out of the way, kick forward 90, kick back also 90. So really good. I really like the ratchets. They're softer, but they're very effective. You know what I'm realizing? I have his whole... You know what? We're going to do this live and on camera. Those screw holes are not supposed to be facing forward. So he articulates that well that you can bring the whole thing around almost like a can-can dancer, because, you know, we've seen so many can-can dancers do that. I don't know what I'm talking about. All right. Then he can kick back almost 90 on the knee. Like I said, you know, the nose cone is really sniffing his butt there, and it causes some issues. It's, you know, it's not the end of the world, but it's a little bit disappointing that they do that. I just feel like they should have sat inside a little bit more. I don't know why they stick off the back like that, but anyways, then you get down to the ankle, and you do have an ankle pivot. I am just now realizing that you got to make sure you have them right. If you have them wrong, though, nice kind of quality of life feature. You just slide this bad boy off. Slide this bad boy off. This is just absolute chaos, huh? There we go. Then you can do like that. Now you have your functional ankle pivot. So really deep pivot there. I will say also, as big and bulky as this guy is, he has really solid balance. He doesn't give you much trouble. He holds a pose well. He obviously looks a little bit goofy because I'm not trying to pose him, but, you know. Something to go over real quick. Weapon storage. This is Superion's gun. I personally choose to pose it kind of like this. Bring this up. I put one of Air Raid or Skydive's blasters right here. Then there's that little square, which we, as you can tell, blocked on both arms. I put one of Fireflight's or Slingshot's guns underneath there. Then you take, as intended, Silverbolt's gun, attach that right there. You can put that in his 5mm port. You can technically put this gun with any of them if you wanted to. Then I put the remaining Slingshot or Firebolt blasters right here. I saw in that toy guy's review, he puts them kind of at an angle, but I prefer them straight up, almost like smokestacks, which I know isn't really a thing with a jet, but, you know, what are you going to do? Then, basically the rest of it, I do the same as that toy guy. The more bulky guns go outward. This one goes here. And this one goes here. I've technically got them not exactly where I would put them normally, but it doesn't really matter. Then we got this one here. And this one here. Like I said, that's not really preferable. It's not how I would have wanted to do it. I wish that there was more dedicated weapon storage, but it gets the job done, and I don't think it looks bad per se. I think it looks fine. The worst one would probably be this, and really, you can probably find a better place for it. I prefer to put weapons on the weapon, if that makes sense. All in all, though, Superion, the aesthetics of him, the articulation, very solid figure. I'm really happy with him as a combined mode, but now we'll go ahead and get into the comparisons. So up first for comparison, and to give you a pretty clear idea of just how big these guys are, I don't actually have a big enough screen to get them in the frame, so I had to pull out too far, and now you can see back behind my little recording area. But these guys are huge. This is obviously Studio Series Devastator. I'm probably going to do a review for him in about 2 weeks from now. They are both pretty much exactly what I wanted from their respective releases. I will say I prefer Devastator's overall design just because, I mean, for one thing, he's the original combiner, but, you know, it's a little bit more, it feels more like a combiner because he doesn't have the frame like Superion does. You know, Superion kind of looks complete even without the Aerialbots attached to him, whereas Devastator is obviously made up mostly of the Constructicons, aside from the crotch piece. So it's not a perfect solution though. He is clearly less stable and less sturdy than Superion, and Superion's design probably would have made him even more fragile than Devastator. They did a great job of making Devastator stocky and stout, but I think it makes sense for both of them, and I'm happy with both of them. But yeah, you can kind of get an idea of just how big they are, and next up for comparison, we've got the SS-86 or MD-005 knockoff version of Commander Class Optimus, and then Leader Class Studio Series Megatron. This kind of gives you a better idea of the scale of this guy. Obviously, you know, he's not quite as big as Devastator, but I think he's in scale for what he's supposed to be, and I think it really makes sense with all of the Aerialbots being deluxe class except for Silverbolt. I really like how they look together, despite him not being Studio Series because he wasn't in the 80s movie. He still fits that G1 aesthetic really well, and yeah, they they stack up real good together, and he honestly makes Optimus and Megatron two of the largest figures we've gotten in their, well, I wouldn't say commander class, but, you know, they're big dudes, and he makes them look pretty small. And case in point, next up we have some more standard size guys, the deluxe class, kind of Missing Link-esque Optimus, and then Vortex from, hopefully, the Bruticus soon-to-be completed combiner. These guys, obviously being deluxe class, are smaller, so when you put them up against Superion, it really shows just how big he is with regular figures. And I kind of just had these guys on hand, so that's why I picked them, but they are kind of some of the smaller characters. So when you put them next to him, and then you put even the big guys next to him, he's definitely living up to that kind of expectation of a combiner being huge. Now that we've gotten them, and now that my recording studio is well and truly terribly screwed up, I'm going to go ahead and get him disassembled, bring him back down to his individual Aerialbots, and we'll do some comparisons with them. First up for comparison with the base mode Aerialbots, I guess, the MD-005 KO version of SS-86 Commander Class Megatron, and the Studio Series Transformers the Movie Leader Class Megatron. I'm kind of doing the same thing where I'm just using the two molds and not bringing in all five, just because the heights are identical. You know, it's reuse, so you're kind of, you know what you get depending on, you know, which ones you're looking at. They scale really well, I think. I mean, pretty standard for deluxe class. You know, Commander Class Superion is about the right height, a little bit shorter than Optimus, just a head shorter. Doesn't come through super evidently from the camera angle. It kind of makes him look a little bit taller than he really is. So he's about a head shorter than Optimus, and then shorter still than Megatron. So scaling on these guys, once again, really good, just like it is in the combined mode. Nothing to worry about there. They're going to fit into a G1 collection perfectly. But then to look at some shorter options, we have the Combaticons member Vortex and the kind of Missing Link style Optimus. It's a deluxe class out of Generations. These guys are also very well scaled. You know, Vortex should be about the same size as a member of the Aerialbots, give or take. And he's kind of a little bit beefier, which I think, again, works. He's a Combaticon. And then, you know, Optimus, obviously this version of Optimus isn't really in scale, but he kind of gives you an idea of those shorter bots and how well they work with the kind of stockier Silverbolt and then the smaller Aerialbots. So again, these guys scale really well. Transformers really doesn't have a problem with scaling issues for the most part, at least in robot mode. So Really like that. Something to note also, these guys basically have the same connection. So as far as I can tell, you can just kind of hot swap parts between the different combiners. I don't have Minosaur, so I don't know if those guys have different connection points, but at least we know that as the Combaticons come out, aside from maybe the feet, because they might have different attachment points than these guys, but that, only time will tell. But I think we're pretty confident that Vortex and Blastoff will be able to kind of mix and match between the different combiners. So that's kind of exciting. I know that's kind of a fun idea for the original toy line. I'm glad that they're carrying that over into this one. So pretty exciting, but that's all I've got for comparison. So now we'll go ahead and jump into the conclusion. Wrapping up my review now on the Aerialbots Superion set of deluxe class figures and Silverbolt. I'm really happy with this guy. I think all in hand, everything really comes together nicely, and it's a very solid combiner. I think it's a massive improvement. Despite, I've never owned the prior release of Superion, but from what I've kind of seen from reviews and stuff, this does seem to be a marked improvement. I don't mind the frame. I think that it makes sense for the design of the figure, and my only real complaint with it being a frame combiner is the jets at the legs aren't really that noticeable. They don't really add that much to the figure overall, and honestly, you could just kind of jerry rig the bay doors to be closed on the legs and not get air raid and skydive and just call it good. I don't recommend doing that, because on their own, I actually really like those figures, and that mold is my preferred mold of the 4 deluxe class guys. So they're still worth getting, in my opinion, just even as single releases, but it would have been really nice if they had integrated into the legs a lot better than they did. They really don't integrate at all. Just to kind of show you, in case you skipped the conclusion, they just really stick out a lot, and from head on, if you tilt it out a little bit, you can kind of see them, but they're really just not adding much, and they do impede on the articulation. Something that made them fit in a little bit more naturally, like the arms do, would have been really cool. Obviously, you can still kind of see the frame of the arms, but they feel more in line with the design, and they feel like they're kind of supposed to be there, whereas the leg aspects just kind of stick out. So other than that, I really don't have any issues with this combiner, and I'm really happy with it all in all. Aside from maybe some lacking areas of the Aerialbots, just by virtue of them being deluxe class figures, they're missing a little bit of paint. Some articulation maybe would have been nice, a little bit of added articulation, but the inaccuracies with Fireflight's alt mode is kind of a bummer, but that's kind of to be expected with these janky G1 reworks. So I get it a little bit from that perspective, not to make too many excuses, but yeah, I do a rating system. It goes first grade, high grade, real grade, master grade, perfect grade. This guy, I really wish I could give him perfect, and it is a really fun figure to mess around with and to switch back and forth. All the transformations are super fun. It's a solid combiner. It does so much right, but then, the weird kind of iffy weapon storage, and then the janky way that the legs work, or the leg combiner figures work. And then Silverbolt's alt mode is another thing that, that his feet really stick out bad in his alt. So all in all, I feel like I have to go master grade. I would like for it to have been perfect, but it just doesn't quite hit that mark for what I consider perfect grade to be in my mind. So yeah, it's going to be master grade, but that definitely doesn't mean that it's not a good figure. It's definitely, if you like combiners, if you like G1, it is worth picking up, and I'm not, I have no regrets about buying it. So that's been my review. Hopefully you guys found something to take away from this. Hopefully I helped out in your decision-making process. If you're going to pick this guy up, let me know. If you already have him, let me know what you think. What were the things that sold it for you? Or if you didn't pick it up, what are the things that were kind of the deal breakers? So, all right, thanks for stopping by, and I hope you guys have a good one.